Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. Spring wildflowers are in bloom, and some of the most common species play an important role in herbal medicine.
With herbs, it's not a one dose and done. These are built up in the body with repetitive use. It's not an overnight fix.
What's your favorite style of egg roll? An acclaimed out-of-the-way restaurant in Pounding Mill, Virginia, uses an unexpected ingredient.
No, actually, one of our old staff came up with the idea. She wanted to put a slice of cheese, and the thing that was around was Velveeta. So after we tasted, we thought, wow, that's good.
And more school boards are pulling books from library shelves. We'll speak with a reporter in a Virginia county where 57 titles were yanked.
So it's kind of a broad list of books. A lot of them have to do with the LGBTQ community, racial issues, mental health, stuff like that.
You'll hear these stories and more this week inside Appalachia. Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. Every April, violets bloom across Appalachia. They add flashes of purple, white, and yellow to the deepening green of the hills. But violets do a lot more than add natural flair. These flowers have long been a key ingredient in herbal remedies. People use them to fight cancer and the common cold. And they make a pretty tasty snack. Folkways reporter Wendy Welch brings us this story.
Brandy McCann is a self-taught herbalist from Blacksburg, Virginia, who considers violets a personal gift. She was born in late April when the flowers typically bloom.
I was born on Earth Day, actually. That's always a very special thing to me when I see the violets blooming every spring around my birthday. I just feel like it's such a gift from Mother Nature.
Brandy honors that gift by using the violets to make presents for friends and family. In her sunny kitchen, with a view of the flowers growing in her yard, she's teaching me to make skin toner.
So here I have a jar full of dried violets. And I harvested them probably a couple weeks ago. I let them air dry on a towel. And you can hear they're kind of crispy, crunchy. Put them in the jar. And then I pour the oil and fill the jar, leaving just a tiny bit of headspace. Put a lid on it. Shake it. Give her a good shake about every day. And then at the end of that month to 6 weeks, just strain out the plant material, and then you have this wonderful infused oil.
But Brandy isn't the only one using violets for a fun home project.
Can I do the scoop yet?
Yeah. You want to help, Mama?
Nika Frazier studied at the Chestnut School of Herbal Medicine, and she's teaching her daughters herbalism as part of their homeschool curriculum.
Maybe let's try.
Today, they're measuring ingredients for violet sugar.
It is purple.
It is purple.
And it smells good.
Learning with violets can be fun, but when they have playtime, Nika's older daughter doesn't like to waste time.
One of her favorite things to do is to know that she can just be walking outside playing, take a break, eat some flowers, and keep going.
Nika learned to love foraging from her grandmother.
She was actually the person who planted that seed in me that you could find nourishment out in nature.
It is a seed Nika delights to see growing in her children as they forage on the family homestead in southeastern Ohio.
I get to take my 2 daughters out into the woods, and I teach them what I know, and they are so very interested. They light up. They love taking this in, and they retain it, they apply it, they ask questions, and it's just really, really enjoyable to watch these little budding herbalists run around in the yard every day with their inquisitive minds.
Those minds have retained a great deal of information, even at their tender ages. Nika asked her kids when one might want to forego a violet snack.
What about if we see it growing right beside something like a poison ivy plant?
Then we definitely don't want to pick it because there are oils on the poison ivy, right?
Yeah.
Keeping that caveat in mind, violets are one of the safest flowers for new foragers because they're so easy to identify.
I like that they're gentle, they're easy to find.
Beth Schuler is a veterinarian who studied at Purple Moon Herbs and Studies.
And so safe and easy to use that you can put it in your cocktail or your salad, but at the same time, it's very strong and powerful enough to help cure cancer.
Beth owns Powell Valley Animal Hospital in Big Stone Gap, Virginia. She often uses violets in her practice. Beth says they're a good herb for breast care in dogs and people.
Most of the dogs that we would use violets for are you're dealing with breast cancer, mammary cancer, or mastitis. We would do a combination of oral treatment with a tincture.
Violets are also a great cleanser for infected wounds. Beth's youngest dog, Sirius, is about to get a special treat because she wants the flower power working inside of him.
He recently went out in the snow and got a little cut on his foot, and so he's got some mild lymphatic inflammation up in his axillary lymph node draining from that injured toe from the ice. So, where'd you go, Sirius?
Sirius clearly enjoys the violet toast spread.
Good boy. I don't usually give dogs toast, but it does act as a very nice absorptive sponge for tinctures to go down easily and less mess.
You heard Beth mention lymph. Humans and dogs have multiple lymph nodes. Think of them as internal trash cans trying to keep the garbage away. When we get sick, lymph nodes under our arms sometimes swell up and ache. But lymph nodes have no pump. Violets are excellent at breaking up and dispelling lymph from our bodies. Just another reason to love them, in Dr. Beth's opinion. But also a reason to treat them with respect and not eat too many of them at once.
Violet is very powerful and easy to find. But again, it is not a simple herb.
In other words, don't go eat a bunch of violets or rub them on your dog's feet and expect either one of you to feel better right away. Beth's dog Sirius got a few days of tincture toast.
With herbs, it's not a one dose and done. These are built up in the body with repetitive use. It's not an overnight fix.
Literally safe enough for small children to swallow as a snack, violets can clean wounds, fight cancer, and even spruce up a gin and tonic. Violets are nothing if not versatile. For Inside Appalachia, I'm Wendy Welch.
That story makes me want to run out and collect up a bunch of violets from the woods near my house. But a word of caution. As we heard, violets have powerful potential, so be sure to consult with a professional before diving in. In the South, people love to argue over which barbecue sauce is most authentic, vinegar, tomato, or mustard. But Cuz's Uptown Barbecue in Tazewell County, Virginia, is distinguished by something entirely different. For starters, its food is inspired by Asian cuisine and local mountain specialties. You can find dishes on its menu, like morel mushrooms, cheesy egg rolls, and country ham caprese. Back in 2022, Folkways reporter Connie Bailey Kitts and her family stopped in at Cuz's for supper. She brought us this story.
It's a little past 5:30, and the gravel parking lot of Cuz's Uptown Barbecue is full of cars, vans, trucks, and motorcycles. Customers are already lining up outside this big purple, orange, and blue barn with its attached red brick silo sitting just off the edge of a 4-lane highway.
It's a blue pig!
Just in front of the restaurant's entrance, 2 life-size ceramic pigs stand like sentries. A pig in a tutu stands atop the gate post. Customers are leaving as we go in.
That door's heavy. I know it'll break your arm.
It's heavy because it's the original double-hung oak door of this former dairy barn. Once inside, paintings of pigs morph into dragons. Red, pink, and yellow Chinese lanterns hang from the dining room ceiling. There's a string of masks and cartoon characters running the length of the bar. You could easily think you're in a folk art museum. That's Siobhan Thompson, who owns Cuz's, seating customers at one of the 40 hand-painted tables or booths.
When we first opened in 79, it was just, we had 4 tables, and there were lines out the door on the porch.
The lines still go out the door. People arrive by all modes of transportation, from hikers on foot to CEOs who come in by helicopter. As the cashier rings up tabs under the eye of a life-size polar bear, busboys maneuver around papier-mâché pigs.
And of course, we're into pop culture. Pee Wee Herman, who else? Superman, Hulk Hogan, Elvis.
Most of this art was either drawn, painted, or curated by Yvonne's late husband, Mike, an art history major who co-founded the restaurant.
He loved animals, period. There's this cow, but he couldn't stand it because it was too plain, so he painted it with polka dots.
Other art in the restaurant came as gifts from customers, like a life-size cutout of Elvis in pink overalls holding a pig in his arms.
Somebody stole that one time. It was sticking out of the convertible as they left the parking lot. But then they brought it back a few years later. They felt bad. See, everything in here has a history.
I was curious about that history, especially since the mixture of Asian and Appalachian seems pretty impossible to miss. Native hickory wood alongside elephant bamboo. Woodcuts alongside a silk Chinese embroidery of chickens. Turns out Yvonne is Chinese and grew up in Hong Kong. She wanted to go to college in the United States.
And my uncle had a really good Chinese restaurant in St. Louis, Missouri. He was my sponsor, and I came and lived with him and started working in his restaurant from day one.
He not only taught her about restaurants, but he also taught her life lessons, like the time Yvonne saw an employee put sugar in her purse.
I said, "Look, Uncle, she's taking sugar from you." He said, "Look away, look away." He said, "She's my best cook, my best worker. She can have my sugar." Think of that lesson. Yeah.
Yvonne graduated from the University of Missouri in journalism. After she moved to Richlands, Virginia for her first reporting job, she met and married Mike Thompson. It was Mike's cousin who suggested they start a restaurant in Mike's old family barn sitting empty by the road, so they named it Cuz's. Barbecue was hard to find back then, so it became Cuz's Uptown Barbecue.
But if he was the only one running it, it probably would fold in a year because he didn't know how to run a business. You know what I'm talking about? I'm the business person and have the organization and the skills, but he was the flair, the fun part. That's the yin and the yang. He the yang and I'm the yin.
In the Chinese philosophy of yin and yang, the point is that differences can work together, and Yvonne says she and Mike were the best examples of that. Mike died 4 years ago in an accident, and Yvonne thought strongly about retiring. But she knew how Cuz's had become so much a part of the community's life, and she thought Mike would have wanted her to carry on.
He's probably still speaking up to us down from the grave.
Mike's humor is on the menu covers, where each cartoon character or meme reflects his wit. Open the menu, and you'll see it in the food descriptions too. Like the macaroni and cheese, you can order either plain or skanky. That was the word Yvonne says just came into Mike's head when he needed a way to describe blue cheese.
Well, it was a funny word. People are always like, "What?" But then they laugh about it.
Tartar sauce.
It's early morning at Cuz's, and the kitchen's been buzzing since 5 a.m. Yvonne is crimping a pie crust of one of her popular desserts, and she works right alongside her staff, many of whom have been with her for decades.
Praise for the older people. They know how to work.
But there are plenty of young faces, too, among the 30-some people on the payroll. From baby boomers to Gen Zers, Cuz's staff call each other family, figuratively and literally. Like 65-year-old dishwasher Judy Conley, who works alongside her 21-year-old niece, Megan Dye. Judy remembers Megan as a baby.
When they first brought her to Cuz's, she was about this long, and I got to hold her. And now I'm working with her.
On Mondays, when the task is to make 1,000 egg rolls, the kitchen crew becomes the kitchen brigade, and anyone can get recruited to help. Egg rolls have been on Cuz's menu from the start. The dipping sauce recipe came from Yvonne's uncle, but the version that Yvonne calls a Southern Chinese egg roll came later.
No, actually, one of our old staff came up with the idea. She liked cheese, and she wanted to put a slice of cheese, and the thing that was around was Velveeta, so that's how it came about. And after we tasted it, we thought, wow, that's good.
Good enough to earn a mention in a food exhibit at the Museum of Chinese in America in New York City. Back by the grill, the brick ovens, and the barbecue smoker, award-winning chef Mike Oder, known as Mikey, has just finished cutting up steaks.
This is a prime rib. Just trim it up a little bit.
He's worked at Cuz's for 38 years, and now he's also Yvonne's business partner. He's proud of how the staff work together.
Because everybody's been here so long, they just know what needs done. But everybody here's got their own personalities, and we all click good. It's like a family.
Part of Chef Mikey's job is passing down techniques and shortcuts to the younger guys cooking the meats, like Taylor Hamilton. He started working when he was 15. He has a degree in applied mathematics from Radford University, and he chooses to work here rather than use his degree to teach. But as for applying that math in the kitchen,
simple math ain't really my strong suit, more of like calculus. I'm way better at calculus than simple math for sure. I'm much rather go do some calculus and then break some tablespoons of teaspoons down. So I'm always like, Mikey, will you do this for me? Because I'm confusing myself trying to figure it out.
he gets satisfaction out of working here.
I love the rush that you get from when you get in 20 steaks filled up on your grill and everyone's just screaming at you. I love it. And I love, making great food for people enjoying it, them telling you they enjoyed it, knowing that you made that. I don't know, it's a lot of reward.
Stepping out the back door, I see the restaurant's garden not far from the highway. In a good growing season, Yvonne says it allows Cuz's to serve exceptionally fresh food, like the corn.
We pick them the day we use them, and you can't hardly buy corn like that. It'd be several days old at least. We're trying to conserve our effort to only grow things that we cannot buy.
One of those heirlooms ends up in an appetizer where Cuz's adds an Appalachian twist to the Italian caprese salad, pairing country ham with fresh mozzarella, the basil, balsamic vinegar, and tomato. And this tomato is special because the seed was a gift from a customer whose family had grown it locally for over 100 years. And over the years, it's these kinds of community ties that have sustained Cuz's and been part of its resilience, most recently through COVID sicknesses.
Last Saturday they were closed because they had several employees sick. But there's a group of us told them, we will come and wash dishes, we will prepare salads, we can clean tables, anything to keep from closing.
That's Wanda Lowe, who comes in with her husband almost every Saturday for dinner. And she remembers another time when Cuz's was forced to close. In 2008, a fire destroyed large areas of the kitchen. It damaged the roof, wiring, and furniture. It was actually the second time a major fire had spread through Cuz's. It brought back the despair and made many wonder if this might close the book on the restaurant's history. Yvonne's son Arthur had been home for the summer after just graduating from the College of William and Mary.
He was the one who came to us while we were standing outside seeing the place burning down. He said, you have to rebuild. This is our legacy. I will stay and help rebuild this place and not take a job until you can open back up. So he stayed and walked through the winter, and then he left when we were able to open the door. He found a job then.
As I got ready to leave, Yvonne and I browsed through the Public Library's county cookbook that included one of Yvonne's recipes, along with histories of restaurants. I asked Yvonne what she would want Cuz's to be remembered for.
Treating people the way you want to be treated, walking in their shoes. And maybe it's like an older philosophy. So I think maybe the two words that sum up this place is passion and compassion. What do you think? And a heart. And to me, that's the starting point of a good business.
For Inside Appalachia, I'm Connie Bailey Kitts in Pounding Mill, Virginia.
Cuz's Uptown Barbecue took the winter off and reopened for its 45th season at the end of February. The spring menu includes cold water Virginia oysters on the half shell, curry satay pizza, and of course, lots of barbecue. Those first two stories are part of our Folkways reporting project, which covers arts and culture in the region. You can find dozens more Folkways stories at our website, wvpublic.org. Coming up, a growing number of school boards are pulling books out of libraries, including a Virginia school board that recently removed 57 books. You're Inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams.
Support for Inside Appalachia is provided by Concord University, offering 31 bachelor-level degrees and 6 master-level degrees for students of any age. More information at concord.edu.
Book bans are nothing new, but we're seeing a new spike in book removals across Appalachia, including in North Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia. Sometimes debates that lead to book bans happen in state legislatures, but they're just as likely to play out on the local level in public schools. In January, the school board in Rockingham County, Virginia, voted to remove 57 books from school libraries, prompting an outcry. Ashlyn Campbell has been covering the story for the Daily News Record. I reached out to Ashlyn to learn more about what's happening. Ashlyn Campbell, thank you so much for coming on Inside Appalachia and speaking with us today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Well, we're talking about a county today located in the Shenandoah Valley, Rockingham County. And the school board there voted 4-1 to remove 57 books from school libraries. Why did they take this vote?
This was something that multiple members of the school board campaigned on in November. A new majority came in who are very vocally conservative. They've said that they're concerned over sexual content, profanity, and violence. And at the meeting where they took the vote, they said, we read the books, they're deeply disturbing to us, and we kind of want to protect the kids in the county. So that's kind of the gist of why they wanted to remove the 57 books from schools.
What kind of books were removed? Can you share some of the titles?
So it's kind of a broad list of books. A lot of them have to do with the LGBTQ community, racial issues, mental health, stuff like that. So one of the books, Felix Ever After, is about a transgender teen, kind of coming of age story. There are some books on the list that are considered classics. So books like The Bluest Eye, Beloved from Toni Morrison, and then Slaughterhouse-Five. There are books on the list that do have sexual content, profanity, violence. Looking for Alaska is on the list. And then there are like 1 or 2 books that don't have any sexual content, profanity, violence. One of them is The Invisible Boy, which is a picture book. And then the other one is Drama, which it's like a middle school theater book that has kissing, but no real like sexual content or anything like that. With The Invisible Boy, which is a picture book that talks about not feeling alone and having empathy and stuff like that, one of the board members said that they think it was mistakenly included. There's another title that has to do with race and evangelical Christianity and stuff like that. One of the school board members did say that the picture book she thinks was mistakenly included on the list.
How have students and parents responded to this decision by the school board?
They've said that this removal is temporary while they develop a new policy to review library books. So the vast majority of parents and students that I've talked to have been very upset about the ban. Students have walked out at several of the high schools. They held a rally that kind of talked about all of the issues going on with the book ban. And I know that a lot of people have sent a lot of emails to the board sharing their concerns of they don't think they should ban books because they help represent students and it's a slippery slope and stuff like that. There are community members that have spoken in favor of the removal. From their point of view, I think they don't want sexual content in books in school libraries. But for the most part, the vast majority of parents and students that I've talked to or have spoken out at meetings have been against the decision that they made.
One of the things that comes up in your story is the board members do clarify, like this, they say it's not a book ban, it's a quote, temporary removal. So what happens next in terms of process?
Yeah, so they've started the process of creating the policy that they would like to create in terms of how books enter libraries and how books are reviewed if they're challenged. The other week, they met with school librarians to talk about what policies they have in place, what they would like to see from the policy, stuff like that. And so I think that was the first sort of meeting to talk through what those policies will look like. And they've said they want to hear from community members, parents, teachers, librarians, all of those kinds of people to start developing the policy. They've said that they would like to get it out sooner rather than later. They had that first meeting, and then I think they're going to plan to have another meeting where they hear more from the community. But from there, I think it's just they're going to develop a policy, and we'll see what they decide to include in it.
One of your follow-up stories notes that this isn't an isolated incident, but kind of part of a national trend. And certainly we've seen other communities in Appalachia that have done something similar. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's happening in the bigger picture?
Rockingham County is not the only school division that has experienced book challenges, book bans, removals. For a lot of the school divisions, they have removed a lot of similar titles or have similar lists that they're removing. A lot of that has to do with this website called BookLooks, which is a book review website that, while it says it's not connected to Moms for Liberty, it has ties to the group. So for Rockingham County, the board member who compiled the list said that, I pulled these from parent complaints, but then went and researched through BookLooks. So she has this document that the vast majority of the books that she researched, which was about half of the list, she said, is from BookLooks. There's at least one screenshot for one of the books that she pulled directly for Moms for Liberty too, which is a similar theme across a lot of school divisions where they're using BookLooks or sources like Moms for Liberty to either pull directly from those lists of books, or like in Rockingham County, the board member used to research it. And PEN America has said that book challenges, book bans are on the rise. And a lot of this has to do with those groups that are now pushing removal of books like Moms for Liberty, who in a lot of school divisions are directly going in and advocating for removing a lot of the books that are also on the Rockingham County list.
So this decision was made back in January, and it's got a lot of attention. There was a Washington Post op-ed. I see there's a thread on Reddit, and a lot of other outlets have kind of picked up the general story. Do you think that bigger attention has made any difference in Rockingham County at all?
For the school board, no. The National Coalition Against Censorship sent a letter to the school board advocating for them to put the books back and to have certain things in their process to review books. PEN America also worked with a number of authors to, again, advocate for them to return the books and not have a book ban. And when I've talked to the chair of the board about this, he said that he's not interested in national groups' opinions about what's going on because he's listening to his constituents in Rockingham County. I think he sent a one sentence email back to PEN America that was like, my constituents are in Rockingham County. And when I talked to him about the National Coalition Against Censorship letter, he said something similar. He's not taking anything that they're saying into account because he's listening to people in Rockingham County.
Have there been any changes since this happened in January? It's been a couple of months.
The biggest thing that's happened is that meeting with librarians where they shared their thoughts. A lot of them said that the decision really hurt them because the board didn't consult them beforehand. But for the most part, I think the board is going ahead with new policy to review challenge books and then also to determine how books end up in school and classroom libraries. There's been a lot of backlash. There's been a lot of discussion about what's going on. But from what I've seen from the school board, I think they are just going to go forward with their plan of how they're going to develop the policy and what they'd like to see. In one of the work sessions, they did pull from a lot of other school divisions of examples of policies for libraries. And they've said not everything that are on those policies they want to include, but they want to like pick and choose and stuff like that.
From reading your story, it looks like there are existing procedures already set up for the libraries. Can you tell us more what those look like?
A general gist of how librarians make their collections. In Rockingham County, they have collection development policies for each school. So they use things that compile reviews, and there's a number of websites that they use to kind of look at books and determine what's going to be included in their libraries. The division has also had a policy that was used to review challenge material for library books for instructional material. Now, the board has said that's only for instructional material. It's been a practice to use it for library material, but really the policy is only written for instructional material. The policy has been used for library material for a number of years, but for the school division, libraries have collection development policies. Parents can go in and research what books are in their school libraries, and parents also have the option to be notified when their child checks out a book so they can see what their kid is checking out. And from my understanding, it's like in the single digits of the number of people that have actually utilized that option. So there are school-specific collection development policies. They use a lot of the similar resources. And there also was a county policy that they said is used for instructional material, but has been used for library material in the past.
Ashlyn Campbell, thank you so much for coming on Inside Appalachia and speaking with us about this.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
About this time of year, backyard gardeners start thinking about getting seedlings into the ground. But a heads up, this year the USDA changed its plant hardiness zone map, which tracks dates and what kind of plants can grow where. The Allegheny Front's Carol Holsopple has more.
According to the USDA, 80 million American gardeners and growers use its plant hardiness zone map as a guide for planning and planting. Last year, it was updated from the 2012 version using data measured at weather stations from 1991 to 2020. And not surprisingly, with warming temperatures, about half the country moved into the next warmest half-zone classification. I asked Glenn Bupp, a commercial horticulture educator for Penn State Extension, how the map zones are determined.
They are based off of the average low temperatures over the winter, and they're in 10-degree increments. So the difference between 6 and 7 would be 10 degrees, but within those zones, there's A and B, which is separated by 5 degrees.
How do you use the USDA plant hardiness map?
It's a very good tool, especially when talking with folks about plant selection. And when they have questions about whether or not a plant's going to be well adapted to a specific area, that's one good way. Another would be for planting dates. So it can be very informative for when we expect our last and first frosts to be, which is useful for knowing if there's enough time for a plant to be harvested, or if you're going to put a plant in the ground, what kind of protection it may need if you're kind of hedging your bets prior to a frost.
An updated map was released late last year. What are some of the changes in Pennsylvania?
I mean, I deal mostly with Western Pennsylvania. And so when you kind of just type in zip codes, it's really a fun tool. It shows you what your USDA growing zone is. And it also will actually show you what the changes are from that 2012 map. On average, it's like a 3 to 4 degree change across different zip codes in Western Pennsylvania. So that might kick you from like a 5A to a 5B. It might even leave you in a 5A. That doesn't mean that we won't get, or in that year zone, you still won't get possibly a record-breaking cold. It just means that those averages have adjusted 3 degrees warmer. And that change to me it doesn't mean that we're generally warmer, but what that does mean is that we have like more wild variations, especially in our transitional season times. So it doesn't mean that we can go start planting palm trees, right? It does mean that we need to be careful with these temperature swings, especially like kind of almost what it feels like we're experiencing now, where it's really warm and then really cold. It's kind of indicative that you're going to get more of that.
How can home gardeners or people who have farms navigate changes in either their plant hardiness zone or increased temperatures?
You can be thoughtful about what you plant, for one. Plant things that are well adapted to our area. So I always like to promote native plants, for one. But just because it's native doesn't mean it's necessarily the right native. You want to be selecting plants that have wide ranges in their USDA growing zone adaptability. So for instance, if you're in a USDA growing zone 6, choosing something that has a range between 3 and 9 is going to probably be a pretty safe bet. Whereas if you're on the edge of that, selecting a plant that maybe is a 3 to 6A, you might have problems with that. And you can think of it from the other perspective as well. So not pushing those zones. And diversity is good too. So, diversity to me kind of is the same as resilience. So if you can put more diversity in your landscape, you're going to be resilient to variable changes in the weather. Bringing your plants in too. I mean, if they're containerized plants, don't be afraid to just put them in the garage for a short period of time to get them through some of the variable temperatures.
That was commercial horticultural educator Glenn Bubb speaking with the Allegheny Front's Kara Holsopple. The Allegheny Front is based in Pittsburgh and reports regional environmental news. The United States is producing record levels of natural gas. Not only did the industry break production records last year, but the U.S. became the largest exporter of natural gas in the world. And the industry is planning to build even more terminals on the Gulf Coast to export liquefied natural gas, or LNG. But in January, the Biden administration suspended permitting for those new terminals. That decision attracted criticism from the oil and gas industry. Tennessee, Louisiana, and 14 other states, including 5 in Appalachia, sued to block what the administration is calling a pause on new permits. To learn more, WVPB's Curtis Tate spoke with Sam Reynolds and Anna Maria Haller-Makarowicz of the Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis.
What does the pause on permitting for new LNG export terminals really mean?
Just for perspective, the U.S. is currently the largest global LNG exporter worldwide. We export about 86 million tons of liquefied natural gas a year. That's more than Qatar and Australia, which are the next 2 largest. The U.S. currently has 5 projects under construction to export more LNG that would nearly double that amount over the remainder of the decade. Now, the U.S. pause on permitting does not affect any of the existing or under construction projects. So that's really important for consumers around the world to know that the U.S. is still on pace to nearly double its export capacity, and it's already the largest worldwide, right? Now, in Asia, the U.S.'s largest customers are Japan and South Korea. And a lot of these new export facilities in the U.S. are justified under the impression that our customers need more of this LNG. In fact, if you look at these 2 largest buyers, Japan and South Korea, both are reducing their natural gas and LNG demand, and actually quite dramatically. So in Japan, LNG exports peaked in 2014 and have declined ever since. And they actually fell 8% last year, which is more than double the rate of decline in previous years, right? Japan is upping its nuclear and renewables capacity and actually doesn't want any more of this very expensive fuel that is LNG. It's opting for cheaper resources. And South Korea is very similar, right? LNG demand fell 4% last year as it brings on cheaper energy sources like renewables and nuclear.
What about Europe? Didn't Putin's invasion of Ukraine cause European countries to become more reliant on U.S. LNG?
U.S. was thinking, Europe is in a big crisis and we really need to step in to supply all that the LNG that they need. At the same time, Europe was working on their strategies to reduce gas demand. So what we see today at the beginning of 2024 is a different reality than the one happened at the beginning of 2022. So what we have been saying in Europe, and I think that's also the concern for the US, is that we need to analyze today's conditions. Yeah. For example, the gas demand in Europe reduced 20% in the last 2 years. Nobody could expect that. Okay, we could agree in certain instances there's some part of gas demand destruction. Okay, part of it. But great majority of it has been implementation of energy efficiency measures, on gas demand management, on renewables. It's like the mentality in Europe has changed now. Yeah.
Can countries turn to other sources for LNG?
Where is demand actually increasing? And the largest sources of growth for this product are in South Asia, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Philippines, Thailand, Singapore. Now, these are much more price sensitive countries. They don't have the same amount of wealth that Europe, Japan, and South Korea have to spend on this relatively expensive product that is US LNG. And in fact, our main competitors for supplying these markets are Qatar and Australia, which are much cheaper sources of supply to this region. So they're going to be making an economic decision about where to buy LNG. And actually, since the pause, we've seen a spate of deals announced with Qatar to buy more of their LNG. So it's not necessarily that these countries are turning away from the US specifically because of the Biden pause, but there is an economic calculation to be made. Qatari LNG can often come in 5 to 6 times cheaper than US LNG, which has to be shipped all the way around the world.
Also, I want to add something here. When the crisis started in Europe, Europe realized the dangers of depending so much on one supplier. That was the main problem that Europe was facing. So I don't think they are going to allow the same thing to happen. Yeah, they are saying we need diversification of sources. So they will be up to a point where they will say, that's it, we need to diversify. We cannot accept more US LNG because we need to have more sources supplying the gas and the LNG to Europe, yeah? So that also comes into place that Europe is very, had a lot of pressure of not repeating the mistakes of the past.
Has the Russia-Ukraine war accelerated the adoption of renewables and energy efficiency in Europe?
Yes, I can say that. And for example, energy efficiency. Before we were not talking about that topic. And suddenly, look, in September of 2022, I was in Madrid for an event, and it was hot, and they had like a law that they couldn't have the air cons. They had to them up to a certain level because they didn't want to use more energy. Yeah. We also got lots of talk here, like, you know, the thermostats in the winter, put them just 1 degree less, you know. So they started to think about, like, us as consumers, we could also do something to reduce a little bit our consumption. And it was not talked like that before. Now it was very much talked. And yes, definitely they decided, you know what, we need to speed up the renewables. We need to reduce all the problems with the bureaucracy and all that to allow those projects to come into operation. So they accelerated that. I can say that they accelerated that, yeah.
That was Anna Maria Haller-Makarowicz and Sam Reynolds speaking with Curtis Tate. The number of students enrolled in special education has been growing. It's doubled nationwide over the past 4 decades. Meanwhile, public school enrollment is low compared to where it was before the COVID-19 pandemic. Researchers in West Virginia are studying special education data in hopes of developing solutions for students with the greatest need. WVPB's Chris Schultz has more.
Over the past 5 years, overall enrollment in West Virginia's public schools has declined by nearly 10%. However, educators like Rachel Brown say during the same period, the numbers of special education students have gone up.
Everyone's overworked as our numbers keep rising, and our county has done a lot of cuts this year because of our enrollment numbers have gone down, but we couldn't cut. Our numbers have gone up.
Brown is the IDAU, that's Intellectual Disabilities and Autism, Special Education Curriculum Specialist for Kanawha County Schools. She oversees more than 60 self-contained classrooms across the county where students with the most complex needs, who require the most support, are placed. The increase is not unique to Kanawha County, the state's largest school district.
Everywhere. It's increasing everywhere. I was discussing with a specialist yesterday. 10 years ago, she was in a rural part of the county, and I was like, I bet you had a sweet, tiny little classroom of like 5. Now, in the same location, we have 2 self-contained classrooms at the school, and they're both full. That's a huge change, over a decade.
A new analysis from the Institute for Policy Research and Public Affairs at West Virginia University's Rockefeller School of Policy and Politics is quantifying some of those changes. Samuel Workman is the director of the institute.
In West Virginia, it is a problem of some magnitude. We're talking between, depending on the year you look, anywhere from 40 to 50,000 students. So it constitutes about 1 in 5 in the current year of students. So 20% of our students, that's a great number of our young folks who are on independent educational plans.
He and his team analyzed the last 5 years of Individuals with Disabilities Education Act data, also known as IDEA, from the West Virginia Department of Education. The report compiled a data set from 2017 to 2023 addressing the demographics, geography, and trends in independent educational plans, or IEPs, in the state.
States will monitor things like how often these kids are in normal classrooms, or standard classrooms, I should say, any disciplinary actions taken against these children, and sort of assessing performance over time, both for their sake and relative to other students.
Workman's study shows the breadth of conditions, both physical and developmental, covered by IEPs. They run the gamut from difficulty with vision or hearing to psychological issues. The largest category is now specific learning disabilities, which Workman says the federal government defines as psychological problems with processing language. Categories like autism and developmental delay have also witnessed increases, especially in recent years.
Which I understand to be associated with a whole host of environmental problems in children, substance abuse in a home being one. But those are the sorts of things we are seeing, at least in present time. Sort of explosion is probably too strong of a word, but certainly sharp upticks in the number of children categorized within those disability categories versus the traditional sort of hearing disabilities and this sort of stuff.
The analysis reveals interesting demographic distributions, including the fact that a near 2/3 majority of students on IEPs are male. More data and study is needed to better understand such discrepancies, as well as the relationship between the various factors driving the trends, including the opioid crisis and lack of access to resources like early childhood interventions. Workman credits the state's Department of Education for making the data easier to access. He hopes his study helps to make it easier to use and understand, and ultimately, bring more eyes to the issue.
The way I organize data is not the way, say, a public health person would organize the data. It's not the way an education professional organizes data. And so continuing to work to make that data as integratable as possible with our public health systems and our education systems will work wonders in understanding the nature of the problem, what we're dealing with.
Workman says with 1 in 5 students having IEPs, the far-reaching effect of education, from the immediate impact of each student to the broader implications for workforce development and businesses, makes a better understanding of special education needs imperative.
The degree to which we can better understand these children, help them to the extent possible to lead sort of productive, rich lives, both at home and at their place of work and all this sort of stuff, the better off the state's going to be. It's a real problem with a real need for lots of eyes.
Brown agrees.
Numbers mean a lot and data means a lot. I always have hope. That's the best part of being a special educator. So yeah, I'm hoping that this will help make special education a priority and just education in general a priority in our state.
For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Chris Schultz in Morgantown.
Ted Olson is a renowned folklife expert who's been studying Appalachia for more than 50 years. He's also a professor at East Tennessee State University, and now is the subject of a new documentary by West Virginia Public Broadcasting's Landon Mitchell. In the documentary, Olson gives a tour of places associated with the Johnson City Sessions and Richer Tone Records, the first independent record label dedicated to bluegrass music. documentary is called Dr. Ted Olson, Appalachian Music Historian. You can find it on WVPB's YouTube channel. Till next time, thanks for joining us as we journey throughout Appalachia. Our theme music is by Matt Jackford. Other music this week was provided by Sean Watkins, John Ingram, John Blissard, Amethyst Skia, Dinosaur Burps, Doc Watson, and Frank Hutchison. Bill Lynch is our producer. Xander Alloy is our associate producer. Our executive producer is Eric Douglas. Kelly Libby is our editor. Our audio mixer is Patrick Stevens. We had help this week from Folkways editors Nicole Musgrave and Mallory No Pain. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter @InAppalachia. You can also send us an email to insideappalachia@wvpublic.org. Visit wvpublic.org/InsideAppalachia to subscribe or stream all of our stories. Or look for Inside Appalachia on your favorite podcast app. Inside Appalachia is a production of West Virginia Public Broadcasting.